Good morning, boys and girls. Continuing with our introductory book series, I thought today I'd present briefly this book, which I highly recommend for beginners and people who aren't familiar with Krishnamurti especially. Now, he didn't write this book. He didn't write many books. He wrote very, very little actually. But this is a compendium and an edited version, and it can be quite inspiring for people who are just starting out. And also for people that are, just trying to build momentum or something. I recommend it. It's divided up into a lot of very short chapters of a page or two. And the title, it was published in 1975, which was a very good year. Okay, and then, so we have what are we seeking? Self-knowledge, belief, effort, contradiction. What is the self? Simplicity, awareness, desire, self-deception, power and realization. Why spiritual teachers? On knowledge, on discipline, on war, surrender to what is, on sex, on love, on death, on time, on triviality, on stillness of the mind, on the meaning of life. So all of these are very nicely cut up into these little topics. And while I'm here, I noticed he said on spiritual teachers. At best, I think Krishnamurti saw spiritual teachers as a necessary evil. And he may not have even thought that. He's an Indian, and there's a whole industry in India of teachers and gurus and so on and so forth. And here in the West, we have our fair share of fakes also. But he points out, which is very, very true, that ultimately is between you and truth, between you and God, between you and reality, however you want to phrase it. But I recommend this book. You probably have it in your library anyway. The First and Last Freedom. Very dramatic title. I like it. Okay, good. Questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions I wanted to ask. The first one is this might sound like a personal one, but I think everyone has the same problem.
Let's give it a try.
that Yeah, so basically the situation is I had some acid reflux situation in the past, and and I figured out, okay, I was overeating, and now what happens that I want to eat super clean for like a month, and then and taper off medicine. But what happens that after a couple of weeks, I start getting these ideas. Okay, let me try this, and maybe it's not harmful for me, or let me try this in small amount, and that basically breaks the clean thing I'm doing, and it resets the cycle. So even though I know it's ambiguous, I don't know whether it can work, it doesn't work, but I do those stupid things, and then even knowing that it might be harmful for me, but I know that if something is actually harmful for me, for certain, then I totally stay away from it. But it's always this ambiguous situation that uh, that catches me. And I see the same with other people, like people who are trying to lose weight. They do really good for a week, and then they do something like eat something really bad for a few times, and then the same cycle repeats.
They fall off the
And
wagon or something.
yeah, fall off the wagon. So it's I know it's bad, but at that time it feels that I can still work around with it, with indulging a little bit, and that little bit breaks the good cycle.
So it's like someone on a diet, and then every now and then they break down and they cheat. But in this case, it doesn't just make them fat; it makes them sick
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what's the problem?
So the problem is that if I keep doing this, then it will be like I'll be testing every food item. It will take forever. So I just want to do clean for a month. And so I want to control these urges that come up after a few weeks. Initially, it
You want
was,
to control them,
I don't want to give in, basically.
so you want to
Somehow
control
mind,
yourself. You don't want to control the impulses. You can't do that. You want to control
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. and I have been getting better. So like initially it was a few
Okay,
days.
so
Now it's
I'm gonna not mention the medical treatments at all,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
but there are
yeah,
many
yeah,
medications that can be useful for
yeah.
this. But since I'm not practicing medicine, I think probably the best thing to do is to study behaviorism. And what comes to mind is rats and dogs when you're trying to extinguish a behavior and you slightly change the stimulus. It's just the way it is. I mean, you're going to learn sooner or later. You'll either lose patience with one or the other. You'll lose patience with trying out new things because you know it's going to hurt, or you'll run up through all the new things. But it's basically a problem of what's called behavioral extinction, and it's just like training a dog or a rat. Literally, it's the same thing. So I suggest you go to the behavioral studies. You could do B.F. Skinner. You could do Watson. Uh, I forget his first name, Paul Watson or something, or any of the studies that have been done on extinguishing behaviors in rats. So seriously,
Hmm.
because you got the same brain, basically, same limbic system, the same, and eventually they learn, and so will you. So maybe you have to be patient with yourself, or maybe you need to be more disciplined with yourself, or who knows? I don't know how strong the impulses are, but
Hmm.
they're also an opportunity to practice discipline. And if you
Hmm.
dedicate it to the overarching goal, which is to, find truth or God or peace or understanding, then then you're just that much further ahead.
Hmm.
Now, there are some people in India, especially, as comes to mind, who are just totally ascetic, uh, and that, in and of itself, didn't turn out to work too well, at least for the Buddha. But with regard to certain things, they could be abstinent from sex, or they could be abstinent from alcohol, they could be abstinent from whatever they choose. It's a little more complex because you're talking about food, but I'm sure you'll work it out. No one else can do it for you, and that's the beauty of it. So whatever strength you gain, that's strength that you've gained, not that you borrowed from somebody else.
Hmm.
Okay, sir?
Yeah. Uh,
Follow up?
and I have a follow up on that. So the same extension to the extension of a problem is also comes when doing my best. So basically, when I'm doing a certain like anything, uh, not anything like some things, I know I should do my best, but then I do things like the minimal thing that will help me like get around. So like it's like if I'm at work, I do that amount that will get by, but I'm not doing my best. It's like I'm trying to save energy, uh, or like I'm trying to do minimal that allows me to get things done, but also having pleasure at the same time.
Well, what are your priorities?
So priority
I mean,
is
I really can't say anything because I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking about something that could be life critical to somebody else? But you're not talking about Dharma. And in Dharma, you get what you pay for. And if you don't do your best, or if you don't, give it your all, the all will not come to you, right? So I can't speak to what your work is, and
I think.
I don't particularly care to. But the thing is, it all depends on what your priorities are, and only you can know your best. Only you can do your best, and you can do your best at doing your best as often as possible. However, there are some things. I mean, if you don't do your best at washing your car, I don't think that's going to, uh, to me personally, I don't think it's that important. But you might, right? So I don't know. I can't speak to that.
I
Again,
think. I think.
that's you on your own 2 feet.
Mhm. I think that's the problem. That if something is critical, or I deem something important, then I do my best.
Well,
But
yeah.
if something, but
Anything.
if
Okay.
it's something,
Here's a proverb.
mm,
My father used to say, tell me this. It drove me nuts. Anything worth doing is worth doing well, right?
mhm, Mm-hmm.
And I'd say, but Dad, the grass is not worth doing. It's not worth mowing the lawn. It's not worth it. But anything, so you have to decide, is it worth doing? Or maybe it's not worth doing, in which case you need to ask yourself other questions.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know,
I
I can only speak to the Dharma.
Okay. So even
There are
let's
many
say
things
like
a
even
woman and a man, or a man, must face alone on their own 2 feet in their own life, their own cosmos, their own. Oh man, it's beautiful out there. It's it's gorgeous gray sky, and it mutes the green. It's so beautiful. My God. So yeah, that's everybody's got their struggles, man. Everybody's got their cross to bear, their crosses to bear.
I so even in the Dharma work, so so like when I do meditation or when I read Idries Shah, then because it's also exciting, so I do that like with like attention and focus. But when I read Avatam Saka, then I just do it like 20 30 minutes a day because it's not that exciting. So I can see the
Not
difference
yet,
in.
not yet. But that's true. Okay, so that's just devotion. That you do, even though it doesn't feel good all the time, or maybe sometimes it feels bad. You'd rather be doing something else, but you do it anyway out of devotion. And then you dedicate that effort, that resolve, and you just do it. I know it's hard. I mean, it was hard for me.
So devotion to the task or devotion to the goal or to God, like
Well, the
devotion to.
Avatamsaka is taking you directly to your goal, the Flower Ornament
Mhm,
Scripture.
mhm,
So your attitude towards it is going to change. I know mine did.
mhm, mhm,
And then you'll survey it. You'll survey, you know, a lifetime of reading or study or whatever it may be. And you'll look back and you'll say, well, what are the ones that really made a difference? What are the ones that really mattered? What are the ones that really
mhm,
helped as opposed to entertained? And there's very
mhm,
few books. There's the, the series of Idries Shah. There's a
mhm.
magnificent corpus of Thomas Cleary designed for that. There's the Tao Te Ching, and there's a precious few other books. I mean, there are others, but those they don't have the lasting impact that say the Sufi corpus of Idries Shah or or the wide-ranging corpus of Thomas Cleary. These were master teachers in their own, each in their own way. So I mean, you'll see. I mean, and if you find something peculiar to you, then do it. I suppose. Right. I'm just giving you the perspective of one man and you know a half a century of
Mhm,
struggle that we had in the West to get to something resembling a reasonable
mhm.
cosmology, a reasonable path or strategy.
I think
Now,
that as
other
you
things,
said,
by the way, just stop for. Other things are useful for other reasons. Like, for example, the Castaneda is useful in for other reasons altogether.
mhm,
And of course, when the conquistadores came over from Spain and Europe to the Americas, they brought with them Sufis, and they met with the Indians of the region. I mean, the seers, the true what are they called? Shamans, the real ones, and that became the new seers in that series, the new seers.
mhm, mhm.
This is a this endeavor is as old as humanity itself, as far as I can tell, and it runs its course through different countries and religions and political situations, and it adapts as opposed to you adapting to it. These master teachers adapted it for us. That includes Jesus, probably the greatest of them all. You should try the Gospel of Thomas. I saw some of that recently, and I was quite impressed with it. or just the regular Gospels, but the Gospel of Thomas I think is really good. If you can find a decent translation, let me know. Okay, sir?
Yeah, I think it's the lack of insight, like basically not knowing what is good for me.
Right, and
And because of that,
that's what a coach or a teacher or a guide is for. Because we've been down that road before. We've been down that road, and just like my teachers helped me, right, by doing exactly that.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. It just goes on, and you'll do the same for someone else.
Mhm.
I should mention also the Vajrayana Buddhist also, starting with the Dalai Lama, incredible teacher when you get close, and he doesn't have to generalize for the whole planet. Bless his heart. Okay, sir.
Yeah,
And I'm sure there's things I'm leaving out. Okay.
I have a next question. This one is, oh yeah, so this is about awareness. So when I practice the turning the light around or like other meditation, with that, it's getting clearer and clearer to me that the awareness that I am experiencing, that is also the content, not the container. Because I, if I can experience something, then it's an object.
Okay.
It's not the, it's not the container stuff.
Okay. That's a step. That's a step in the right direction. There'll be more steps,
Hmm.
but keep going.
So that seems that, so whatever, if there's anything that I can experience, that I am experiencing an object.
Good.
And if and when I don't experience anything, then I might be actually in the realm of container. Is that how it
No, see,
is?
this is the problem. So now you've got half of it. You've got the object part, but now you need the subject part. Correct.
Hmm.
It's true. An object must be observed to be an object, right? Just as a matter of logic. And it's
Hmm.
true that for an object to exist, it must have a boundary around it. It must have a border, a perimeter, something that differentiates it from the background. Okay, so you've got the object. You're making progress on the object. Now you just need to understand the subject, and you're all set.
Hmm.
It's quite surprising when you discover it.
Hmm. So it sounds like that even the container can be experienced as well.
It's more elegant than that.
Okay.
I don't want to
And the way
spoil.
to
I don't want to spoil it for you.
and the way to get there is just keep on doing and
Keep
then
on doing
focus.
what you're doing. Contemplation, meditation, study, effort, dedication of intent. Solidifying your sincerity. All these things are very, very vital, especially the sincerity part.
Mhm. I think, yeah, it's
Just keep
hard to
going. You'll get
comprehend.
there. You'll get there.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's hard to even comprehend what it would be when I'm not, when I'm experiencing something that is not a content or not an object. But I don't think I have ever been able to do that, experience something that is not an object.
Now here, language is getting in your way too. I can tell.
Hmm.
So drop the language and go for the reality. What are you? What or who are you really? That's the subject half of the equation.
Yeah, that also I don't know because the existence feeling that I used to feel
You do know,
that.
but you've forgotten.
Mhm.
And now you're just trying to clear away the dross, the DROSS of the mind, so you can. It's within you. I think what the Beatles say, it's within you, it's without you, it's everywhere around, or something like that. Life goes on within you and without you, and so on and so forth. That's I think George Harrison.
Sorry, what? George Harrison?
George Harrison wrote a song way back in the day, devoted to Krishna, as I recall. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's, way back then, almost 100 years. No, 80 years ago. Yeah, something like that. No, 40 and 20, 60 years ago.
Hare Rama. That is the ISKCON thing, I think.
That's what?
Hare Krishna. So the Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, like they have a chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Yes.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram.
He made a song from it. I can't remember the title.
Okay.
All right, sir.
So now So now when I think about the I, like the existence feeling that I used to think about, it doesn't have a boundary, but still I am able to sense it, again experience. So that is again an object and not the me.
Can you sense anything else?
I mean, I sense a lot of things, right? Like what I see, what I hear, and.
But see, like everything you see or you hear or you touch requires your consciousness, does it not?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see, hear, or touch anything without that consciousness?
I mean, without the apparatus, like the sense apparatus?
No, not the apparatus. The phenomenon itself of being conscious, aware.
So that part I still contemplate about. So there are signals, and then signals are being perceived.
Yeah, you're still talking about the apparatus, or what we believe to be true about the apparatus. The apparatus falls apart pretty quickly once you get into the brain, and you realize that there's something that has to experience the image. And we have not one neurobiological or computational idea, not even the remotest idea of what constitutes experience, awareness, consciousness. So those are complete mysteries. They're as mysterious now as they were 2,000, 3,000 years ago. And that's part of the good thing about our time, is that we're realizing that the neuroscientists the mature neuroscientists are admitting that. The computationalists, the ones that are, not all been out of shape by hopes and dreams, they realize that we're up against the wall. They have no idea what computationally what experience would be. And so all this talk about conscious robots and all this other stuff is people who haven't studied biology or medicine or something like that, intermediary metabolism, they have no idea how complex life is. The number of synapses in the human brain approaches the order of the number of stars in the cosmos, which is kind of like the number of grains of sand on the planet. It's a complex thing, but even in all that complexity, there's nothing that suggests it's going to hold the secret to consciousness with a capital C.
Like one analogy I can think of is, let's say in a robot, there's one software program that is generating the output, like the signals. There's another software program that is perceiving it and recording it. But then there's a electricity or the field that is enabling both of them.
Okay. Perceiving by a machine or by a camera or by a thermostat is not awareness.
Yeah, that is not awareness. Yeah.
Right.
So like in my case, it's the same thing that there's a one system in me that is generating these sense signals, and there's another system in me that is able to see that or like perceive that
or generate
but
that.
this or generate that.
Yeah. Now you're
But
getting
both
somewhere. Now you're getting somewhere. Keep going down that road. Good. Keep going down that road. Use a mechanical model if you want. It doesn't matter. All rivers flow to the sea.
Mhm.
Try to
But
get the
then these
truth
both.
that way too.
Mhm.
Use your brain, your God-given brain.
Mhm. But both of these apparatus, something is enabling both of these to function.
No kidding.
Otherwise,
No kidding. Yep, you're
and
right.
and the problem is how to get to that thing that is enabling all of this.
You can get to it all of a sudden, which is very, very nice, or you can get wet slowly, like in a mist. Uh, the problem I've noticed with people who get there by logic, and I'm thinking of two very, very smart people at the moment, and they've gotten there by reason, but then they miss the most vital thing, which is that truth is love. You know, they get close. They say, well, truth must be beauty, right? Beauty is something that's ordained by something else, but they don't quite experience that it's actually just unadulterated love. And you can't explain that because the words fall apart. So, but, you know, eventually they'll, you know, even by logic and reason, you can get pretty far enough to get ready to go over the edge. But it's not the preferred way. But for you, it may be the best way. I don't know. For you, I mean, because you're in the field or whatever. God is love.
I've also thought about the feelings of love, like that is mentioned in all these books. And the closest I can think
It's not
of
a
is
feeling. It's not a feeling at all. It's not an emotion. It's beyond that.
Mhm. Yeah, and basically, I'm not able to experience that kind of love that is
Okay,
being
not
talked
yet,
about.
but that's what you're trying to get to. And eventually you'll be there.
Mhm.
Hopefully before you die.
Mhm. And that is different than compassion.
It's the root of compassion. It's the root of everything there is. What's happening here, these two meat socks talking to each other through holes in their face, none of that would be happening without love. The creation wouldn't exist without the love of God. Very fascinating situation.
Mhm.
Think about it, you know. It's really interesting
Mhm.
because then you get back to the, you know, the teachings of someone like Jesus, for example. And it all makes sense, but it doesn't make sense necessarily in the words. It makes sense even deeper than the words.
Mhm.
That's why I strongly recommend people spend as much time in nature as they possibly can because, for example, these trees, they hold their arms up to the sky, and the sky gives them sun and it gives them water, right? And it gives them what they need to keep going and growing. And then they in turn provide shade for the squirrels and the birds and roots for the fungi and so on and so forth. And it's all like just seamlessly perfect. It's
Mhm.
it's not something humans are capable of.
Mhm.
And so nature is itself, when you look at it with the right heart, it is perfection in its own way. Even the decay, which looks so horrible at one level, at another level looks just beautiful. If you look at a rotting piece of wood, well, if you're a lichen, man, that's heaven on earth, right? Not so much if you're a beaver, but if you're a lichen, that's heaven on earth, and it just goes that way, up and down, all the whole way. You know what a lichen is, right? A lichen's like something between plant and fungus. It's a primitive, I mean, I haven't read about lichens in a long time, and I hope nothing's been superseded. But the lichens are these, you'll see them on tree barks. They're like these dark green usually, or muted colors, white or gray or something like that. And they live off the rotting wood. That's their preferred place to live. You also find them on the surface of rocks where nothing else will live. Really interesting creatures, lichen. All right, we're getting into botany now, or proto-botany.
So whenever I have contemplated on the love, like the closest I have gotten to is, so like when I think about
You don't
myself,
contemplate on the love. I mean, you can, I suppose, but ultimately what happens is it subsumes you altogether, your body and your mind.
okay, so there's no yield in like speculating or contemplating about what
I'd
it
say,
would
well,
be.
no, I don't say there's no yield, but ultimately you'll see that it's way beyond contemplation. It's way beyond thought. It's what
Okay.
it's what it is. I mean, at the bottom of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beneath a unified field theory, in quantum mechanics, a quantified field or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to make energy that held information. Somebody. Anyway, we're getting into just a bunch of theory.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any questions about any of the readings or books or Avatamsaka?
I think Avatam Saka, right now I'm just like reading through it,
Okay.
and
Do you have yours there?
yeah, I have mine here. One change I'm noticing is now I'm starting to enjoy the poems whenever they come in
Good,
in
good.
the
There's a
book.
lot of poetry in here. Okay. What page are you on?
Let's see. So this one is page 261.
Names of the Buddhas.
261 is Vairocana.
Can you go up just a little bit and let's do the Four Noble Truths? I think that'd be good for folks.
Which page number?
Page 276.
276.
Yeah, now read it very slowly and carefully.
Okay, yeah.
This is book
The
8,
four.
The Four Holy Truths. Book 8, the Avatamsaka, the Flower Ornament Scripture. Highly recommended reading for 21st century women and men. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the four holy truths. Then the great enlightening being, Manjushri, said to the enlightened beings, children of Buddhas, the holy truth of suffering in this world, endurance, is sometimes called wrongdoing or oppression, or change, or clinging to objects, or accumulation, or thorn stabbing, or dependence on the senses, or deceit, or the place of cancer, or ignorant action. The holy truth of the cause of the accumulation of suffering in this world, endurance, may be called bondage or disintegration or attachment to gods or false
To
consciousness
goods, not
or
gods.
attachment to goods, attachment to goods or false consciousness or pursuit and involvement or conviction or the web or fancified conceptualizing or following or awry faculties,
Awry faculties.
awry faculties. The holy truth of the extinction of suffering in this world endurance may be called non-contention or freedom from defilement, or tranquility and dispassion, or signlessness or deathlessness, or absence of inherent nature, or absence of hindrance or extinction, or essential reality, or abiding in one's own essence. The holy truth of the path to the extinction of suffering in this world endurance may be called the one vehicle or progress towards serenity or guidance or ultimate freedom from discrimination or equanimity or putting down the burden or having no objective pursuit or following the intent of the saint or the practice of sages or 10 treasuries. In this world, there are 4 quadrillion such names to express the 4 holy truths in accord with the mentalities of sentient beings, to cause them all to be harmonized and pacified.
Thank you. So those are the 4 noble truths, and then it goes on to repeat those from a different perspective, or something like that, and they go through all the different ways so you get it right. So I recommend special attention on that chapter. But good, thank you for reading that. Any questions?
Yeah, so like when I read this chapter is captivating, like more exciting
Yes.
than the one I'm on.
I hope I have said that to folks, that yeah, some books will kill you, right, because they just seem repetitive for no good reason. And then you get to other books that are exciting or good, or you're finally getting to something, or there's something real, or there's something useful, or there's something that you can help others with, or and all of that. And then it goes. It's okay. It's to help you. You should study your mind too.
Mhm. It's like whatever my mind deems useful, that is automatically more exciting
Correct. That
than.
perfect. Whatever your mind, you're like everybody else. Whatever your mind deems useful, it's more exciting. The thing is, you don't know what's useful yet or not. That's the. If you did, there'd be no need for the sutra. Now, this is a core Sufi teaching also. If you knew what you need, people read what they like, and nothing could be further from useful, because they like what they know, and they need information that they don't have yet, and you have to get that into them, and hence the use of the Mullah Nasruddin jokes, stories, lectures, anything at all to get the content into people's minds. But it's difficult because 2 premises. 1, there's information that people need. 2, people like what they know. 3,
Mhm.
what they like and what they already know is not what they need. That's why in the Sufi books you cross out any section that you understand or that you like in the first couple of readings.
Mhm.
It's a principle that very few people grok, and to their detriment,
Mhm.
because people say they know what they like, but in fact they like what they know. Just look at art
Mhm.
or music, same thing.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah. I
Have you
have
been
a
reading any
follow-up
other texts beyond the Avatamsaka?
beyond Avatam Saka. Like sometimes I start reading Idries Shah,
Good.
but then
Do you have any
I
questions about that?
so this is like my like second reading of Idries Shah.
Good.
So
I've
as
read
I'm
it probably
reading,
about 8 times. It doesn't
I
get
think for
old.
me,
It doesn't get old, especially if you cross out the parts you already understand.
Mhm. I think for me it's mainly the stories that trumps me because when I read a story, I I have some understanding from the previous read, and then I maybe get some other understanding from the this from the second read, and then
Perhaps.
after that,
Go ahead.
and then after that, mind starts feeling like losing interest in that because it's like, oh, I have already read this, And like
Well,
again,
you
the
should
same thing.
cross out the ones that you understand already. You should cross them out with a pencil.
But then that's also thinking that I know, like I've gotten the
Okay,
whole
fair
juice
enough,
from it.
fair enough. But listen to this. Listen to this idea. We in the West, we like a story that starts in a certain way, goes along in a certain way, and then it has an ending that satisfies us. It's like music. We want an ending that satisfies. Correct?
Mhm.
But what about instrumental teaching instruments that aren't designed to satiate that particular desire, but instead are designed to uncondition or recondition the mind and to open the mind? That's something totally alien to us in the West. If there's a story and we only hear the first 4/5 of it, then we get upset because we want to know how it ends, right? But what Shah and the Middle Eastern corpus include are stories that don't have an ending, that serve a different function. And even that, I mean, if it wasn't obvious from Idries Shah's book, you could read the 1001 Nights, where one story becomes another story, and then it ends as another story begins, and it has a whole different. It's much more like the world, where in reality, no story ever ends. It just morphs into some other locus of attention. Now, that art form is not something we've evolved in the West. I mean, excluding the Middle East. It's hard to think of the Middle East as not Western because of Spain, if nothing else. But so that whole notion that stories must have an ending that satisfies us is kind of juvenile, in fact.
Mhm.
But we have a lot of juvenile thinkers in the West. Very juvenile thinkers. Not that they don't have them in the East, too, in the Middle East also, but we have really dumbed ourselves down in many ways. Not the least of which is the extraordinary jingoism. And basically, when I was growing up, I was at the end of it, thank God, or most of it. But nothing that had been done by the Muslim philosophers, thinkers, mathematicians, artists, all this other stuff, none of that was allowed because it was considered inferior to, the European West and Christianity because of now it's fair. I mean, you can see where it happens because the antipathy between the Christians and the Muslims created this environment where both sides were educating their children that the other was evil and stupid.
Mhm.
So that's not a good situation for learning. So a lot of times I couldn't even bring these books up because people would see that it had this octagon on it, or it was written by Muslims, and they'd go, "Oh, gross! We don't do that. We're Christians. We got everything we need." Not understanding that it hadn't been for the Arab transcribers and translators, we wouldn't even have Western civilization.
Mhm.
So, live and learn. It's going to change. Shaw predicted it would take about 400, 500 years. But we got a good start.
Mhm.
So,
I have a follow-up question on that, but before that, let me read a few lines of this story, and then I will ask the question. I think it's
okay.
related.
All right.
So this one is,
Which book
I
is
think, a
it?
story. So this is The Magic of Monastery.
The Magic Monastery. Beautiful book. And when was it published? Look at the copyright.
Mm, it says first published 1972.
Okay. 1972. All right. In English too. So let's go.
Yeah. So the story is onions. It says a
Onions.
man without a onions. Yeah. It says a man without a sense of smell went to sleep on a bed of onions, wearing a magnificent robe. When he got up,
Magnificent
he,
robe. Okay, so a man without a sense of smell went to sleep on a pile of onions wearing a magnificent robe. Okay.
when he got up, people fled from him in all directions. How lonely is the lot of the aesthete, he lamented. lacking sensitivity of sight, these people are depriving themselves of something superb.
Beautiful. So, how lamentable, lacking the sense of sight, the effetes, are unable. So he had these beautiful, magnificent robes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to, people to appreciate these beautiful robes. And so,
Mm-hmm.
this is a gorgeous story. It's very powerful, but again, it's just a template on your mind. So now, but the robes stink horribly because he slept on onions the night before. So
Mm-hmm.
he thinks that they're running away from the beautiful robes, that they don't appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, they're running away from the way he stinks, right? So this would be,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to use an example, there are some academics or some clerics, right? Or some preachers
Mm-hmm.
who, speak these beautiful, highfalutin words or whatever, but they're arrogant jerks, right? They're insufferable know-it-alls or whatever. And so they think that
Mm-hmm.
they're being rejected because of the content of what they're saying. They're saying it's just too advanced for people. But in fact, what people
Mm-hmm.
can't stand is to be around I hate to use the word a-hole, but that's kind of, easiest way to say it. They don't want to be around that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So and the same thing's true in Dharma. Dharma people who are completely enamored of, let's say, Hinduism or Buddhism or something like that. And they go around trying to teach everybody else how to live their lives. And then the people that are the object of this are, they don't want to be around the person because he's an insufferable jerk and he knows better than everybody and he's got a closed mind, or he doesn't listen, or he doesn't exchange, or something else about him is really obnoxious. But the self-preoccupied person thinks, oh, well, they just repelled by the Dharma, they're repelled by the truth, they're repelled by something else unrelated. So those three sentences right there are just a very powerful template, and you can see that all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can think of some public figures right now who blame society for rejecting them because they're too smart or they're too clever and critical. But in fact, the reason they're rejected by society is because they're insufferable egos. For example, so the same thing applies to clerics, to teachers, to to some extent politicians, although they get away with murder, but certainly to and you got to wonder if it applies to you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you contemplate that, it's not difficult. Then you can, and you somehow or another embed that in your consciousness. Then you'll begin to see that template play out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people might say, "Well, people don't like me because they're racist," right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not racist. You're a jerk. It doesn't matter what color you are. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So just, again, that's a beautiful example. Thank you for using it. Is that the whole story?
Yeah, that's the whole story.
It's perfect. I mean, what more do you want? You see? Is it making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And can you see how that pattern? How would you teach somebody about that succinctly? How would you teach him about it in a way that would be memorable? This is what I mean by master Sufi teaching, right? I mean, masters of teaching. How else are you going to teach that template, that pattern, that without generalizing, using an example of a person,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's memorable for people and a little bit humorous too? Mm-hmm. So he thought that people were insensitive to his beautiful, magnificent robes and they should have been attracted to them. And maybe they would have been, but he stank to high heaven.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lovely story. I like this last one.
Yeah, and
it's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely funny.
And that's in Magic Monastery. Highly recommended. I haven't gone through the Sufi books for folks, because that's a serious study. It takes a serious student to read those the way in which they should be read, and it should be personalized and individualized and prescribed individually. But Magic Monastery, that's a great one. Okay, sir.
So I want to ask a follow up on that.
All right.
So basically, whenever I encounter something that I don't get, for me, there are like two possibilities. Either I lack something which is preventing me from understanding the situation, and I should investigate, or the other possibility, which is I kind of know that it's not useful and I move on. Now the question is that if I start investigating everything,
you'll read them again. You have to read these over and over, right? That's the truth, because some of them you think you understand them, but then you realize that 2 years later, oh no, it's the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. And you go, duh, so you just have to think about these things. So hopefully you'll think about the guy with the onions who slept on the onions in his beautiful, magnificent robes, right? Mm-hmm. As you go through your day, you'll think about different things. And then you'll see the pattern, then you'll never forget it. Mm-hmm. It's like duck soup. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So just be patient.
I think with the reading material that is there, I think it totally makes sense. But what about when I encounter situation in life, like when doing things? Let's say I am talking to someone and something comes up that I don't get. Now at that point, either I judge that based on my current understanding to move on, or I investigate to learn more about it. But what I noticed that if I keep on investigating everything, it takes a lot of time and bandwidth to do that.
You can answer those questions for yourself. You can answer those questions for yourself. Mm-hmm. It depends on what the subject is. Mm-hmm. And how much time you've got, and the other person too. I once asked, it wasn't John Blofield, but it was somebody almost that, qualified. Mm-hmm. I ran into him in the waiting room of an auditorium somewhere, and I said, "Could you explain emptiness to me?" Right? Mm-hmm. And how many times does I get that question? First of all, and secondly, you gotta grok it for yourself. It doesn't help for someone to give you. He says things don't exist the way we think they do. Right? After that, it's up to you. Right? So obviously, everything depends on the situation. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'd sat him down for an hour, right, and said, I'm taking your valuable, precious time, and he agreed to it, then they would be different. But if you just pass somebody in a hallway or something like that, it's totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to stop soon. Anything else before?
Okay. I have one question from one of your last videos, which is about...
Good. Questions are really important for this. Very important. Go ahead.
Which is practicing Dharma 24/7, like all the time.
Yeah.
So for that, like I remember the thing. I keep the intent, but then it gets hard when I'm doing things that are like not not ideal. So like let's say I'm doing something for pleasure, or I'm doing something for, let's say, like I'm being lazy. Now, in all honesty, I know that is not me doing my best, and that contradicts the intentional dharma that I want to practice, and that results in feeling guilt or shame in those situations.
I recommend reading David Hawkins on this. There's a word for people who suffer from it's a hyper punctiliousness or a hyper, but it can get really bad. And David Hawkins, I think, suffered from it. So I recommend that. But you have more than one mind. And if the goal is always there, right? Mm-hmm. Again, this is something you have to work out for yourself. right? I can't tell you to be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say drive all efforts into one, and watch out for obsessiveness in any direction. Obsessiveness
Mm-hmm.
is the enemy of learning, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
Or the enemy of almost the enemy of truth. It's got no place there. On the other hand, if you just use it as an excuse to justify wasting years of your life that you'll never get back and that you're going to regret later, then that's a whole different story. But there's a real balance there. And Hawkins was a psychiatrist, and what's the word for this? It's when somebody becomes hyper conscious that God's watching them and he's going to punish them. So there's elements of guilt and fear and hyper obsessiveness. There's a word for it, but it's not coming to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
People who are obsessed with sinning all the time, and that becomes a sin because all they do is they're just preoccupied with themselves. But he got over it, and he has some things to say about it. So I recommend again David Hawkins, who I can recommend in general as far as he goes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sir?
Yeah.
Anything else?
I mean, I have one more question, but I don't know
Okay,
if
go
you
ahead.
have
Do it.
time.
Do it.
Okay, so this is from one of your tweets. It says, everything has mind in the lead, has mind in the forefront, is made by mind. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, misery will follow, as the wheel of a cart follows the foot of the ox.
Yeah.
So in this, when we say a corrupt mind, what do we mean by a
Let's use
corrupt
greed
mind?
as an example. Greed is its own punishment.
Yeah.
And you can go through any number of vices like that, and you'll find that, I mean, you can interpret that tweet at different levels. I'm just going in the middle right now. But there's a deeper truth to that as well. All right?
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yep.
Vaya con Dios, amigo. Take good care. Guard your mind. It's going crazy out there. Ciao.
Yeah, today is